Hello to our Outfest audience. I am Lauren Holland, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm here with the filmmakers of the Episodic Showcase, which you've hopefully just watched on our Outfest digital festival platform. I love this section so much because of the freedom in format, length, and the range of storytelling that happens, particularly with independently produced episodics, which we definitely saw just now. So welcome to everyone. To kick us off, I'd love for each film team to introduce yourself and answer the question, what brought you individually to the project and the story you're telling? And if you created it, what was the inspiration behind it? And if you were brought in by the creator as cast or producer, what compelled you to get on board? Let's start with the team from Killer Workout.
Hi, my name is Apricot. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I was the writer and the producer of Killer Workout, and I had a little bit acting part in it as the doorman. Killer Workout, as a writer, was born out of my relationship with Nina. We lived together as partners in New York City for 8 years. And we both worked for like the top probably 0.1% of America in our side hustles, just to get by. And Nina was, as a cater waiter and a waitress and as an executive assistant and then an office manager for a major architecture firm. And then me as a personal trainer for still now 18 years. And I dealt with a lot of classism, a lot of people condescending me and trying to get as much from me as they possibly can and give me as little in return in a very manipulative, pointed way. And you get to that where you have to just kind of swallow it and keep going with a smile on your face. And living with Nina, I experienced through her and her stories of what she experienced in work was that not only did she have this classism, but she also had to deal with racism and bigotry and sexism on a level that was mind-blowing for me. On one hand, I was kind of split. I really identified with her and I was empathetic and angry at the same time. And on another level, I saw how viscerally hurt and angry she was. And I have to admit, especially in the beginning of our relationship, I was almost skeptical. I was almost is it really that bad? Or are you just being a little melodramatic? And it really wasn't until later on in our relationship when I got her a job after she got done with a play and needed some work. I hooked her up with a job with one of my clients as a nanny. And I thought it would be a good situation. This woman was a successful executive who was, identified strongly as a liberal and a feminist. And, she was a little high strung, but for the most part was a very agreeable, well-meaning, easy enough to get along with person that I thought it would be better than the other situations, basically. And I was wrong. I was really shocked at the way that Nina was treated versus me. I almost couldn't believe the condescension and how this client agreed to pay her a fixed amount, for a very specific task. And then that task went from just being a nanny to being a house cleaner who also did their laundry and mopped their floor and did all this stuff for not just the same amount of money, but also she was trying to negotiate and give her less money. And I was like, this is fucking crazy. And it culminated in this situation where Nina politely went up to her and was like, look, I can't afford to pay my rent if I don't make the base amount of money. That's why I agreed to this. And this woman responded, I wasn't there, but she responded by screaming in Nina's face about how she was entitled and this whole lecture about the haves and the have-nots. And so Nina walked out. And even when this happened, there was a part of me that really related to her and was like, fuck this, this is really messed up. And then there was another part of me that was like, I hooked you up with this job and you just yelled at her and walked out. And now my job is in jeopardy and we're going to be really fucked financially, And so it took a week of me sitting down and talking to Nina, and hearing it. And then also talking to another client who was present at that time and kind of recanting the events in alignment with what Nina said. And then actually going back and training that client that yelled at her and hearing her go on a tirade about how Nina was an angry woman who needed to pull herself up by her bootstraps and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, wow, that's when it became so clear to me that it really is that bad. And this woman is a racist. And I don't know, I was just really inspired to like, or even like pulled to like try as best that I could to really understand the emotional and psychological turmoil that Nina was going through. And the best way that I know how to do that is through writing, you know? So I just started writing this character as if it was really just like me, but not just having to deal with classism, but having to deal with racism and bigotry and sexism on a regular basis. And I was just like, I got so overwhelmed, like emotionally and psychologically. I was like, I just want to fucking kill everyone. And that's kind of how Killer Workout got started. I was like, well, what if it happens? And what if she snaps? And what if it starts to go in that direction? Then what happens? How does she deal with the backlash of that? And yeah, and then I kind of enlisted, you know, I showed Nina drafts and showed Sarah drafts and showed friends in the community drafts. And we just kind of collectively kept coming back until it got to a point where everyone was like, yeah, like this is, you know, feels authentic and is telling the story in the way that, you know, we all can identify with. So I was like, okay, cool. And so we brought it to Sarah and she liked it and, you know, brought it to production.
Amazing. Nina, do you want to jump in and introduce yourself?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yeah, all good. Yeah, I am Nina and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am one of the leads in the production, and the show, this episode is 3 characters, and I play Joy, who has to deal with, you know, a sadistic and abusive boss, and has for a long time been putting on a really happy face and trying to really fit into the game. And you know, at this point in the episode, you see her snap and completely lose control. And sorry, I'm cat sitting. This is Dorothy. She's really wants to get in on this, but yeah, and at that point she really snaps and loses control. And as Eric said, this story is our story, is a blend of our experiences and trying to understand each other and what was going on at that period of time when, you know, I was going through many jobs and wondering, why are things not working? Why do I feel uncomfortable in certain situations? And even at that point, you don't realize, oh, it's racism, it's systemic racism. So I think in a sense, we were creating this piece out of feelings that were swirling around in our relationship and in our lives. And it's interesting because now those themes are so prevalent in our world. We're having a national conversation about it, about, you know, the fact that racism does not just exist in the most obvious racist circles. It exists in a very, very deep down in people's worldviews, because most of the time those worldviews have been completely unexamined, like, you know, Cassandra, I think, to a large extent, modeled on this client that Eric had, and my boss. I think she's like kind of is just like deep in the water and doesn't know she's swimming in it. And yeah, that's how I came to the project. It's been really fun. It's been a real kind of like I said, like a complete clarifying learning process. It starts as one thing, and then you start seeing it from, you know, you see it up close, and then you see it from like a higher altitude. And it's been special how the piece has made more sense to me personally, and how much it's made sense of this like period of time I went through in my life. Especially dealing with abusive workspaces, abusive racist workspaces. Yeah, so that is, I think I answered all the questions. I had a lot of fun. Playing this part, and I think my wish for it going further would be to make more episodes, because it just is so, it feels that there's so much room to explore and to make something different and special, kind of like off kilter. Yeah, that's my hope.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Team Apricot, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. Jake, you have to unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hi, Jake. You look so cute with your pussy bow extravaganza blouse. Can I just say, by the way?
No, this was the most exciting thing of the week, honestly. So I was like, I've been planning a look for a few days with a euphoria eye. You're welcome. I know Sam and I just got separated, so we're kind of like reuniting as well on this call. So,
do you want to begin?
Sure. I'm Jake. My pronouns are he, him, his. And Apricot came about because Sam is like my oldest friend in Los Angeles. We moved here around the same time. And throughout our thread of friendship, it's just always been artful and creative and hilarious. And we used to laugh all the time, like, is this what people do in LA? Is like go to pool parties and like sit around, but you know, the stereotyped version of what I at least knew of what a gay person looked like, it was not either of us. I'm Filipino, Sam is from Australia, and yet we've always been attracted to the same kind of sense of humor, whether it be like Daria, Beavis and Butthead, Romy-and-Michele, but yet at the same time, we've never seen ourselves in those kind of stories. And so we wanted to just make something about our friendship, and it's had so many inceptions, but the beauty of it was because we like ended up moving in together. It's like such a love affair. And when you're like in that close proximity, you can write an entire series in a night, and that's what we did. And it was like a friendship challenge, and the gift that it has given because of it, like a lot of our friends who have friendships like ours were like, this is just the funnest visual candy I've ever seen. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. For the future, we've discussed a season 2, so stay tuned. I want to see more people like us, and I would like to see more Black stories amplified moving forward in our industry. And yeah, your turn, Sam.
I'm like, that was beautiful. So yeah, I'm Sam. My pronouns are they, them. Jake and I both left like not less than ideal living situations, I would say, like before we moved in together at the beginning of 2018. And we'd always talked about, somehow transposing our friendship onto the screen. And then, as soon as we moved in, it just like happened, because we used to hang out, like it's such an LA thing to like see your friends like once a month. Well, this was like pre-pandemic. Like once a month is like really frequent, but whenever we would see each other, we would just like pick up straight where we left off, like have a friendship bender over the weekend before we had to go back to work. And just like, it was just like a chaos of like laughter and ideas and jokes and making things and zine. And then when we finally lived together, it was like, oh, okay, we can just like put this all into, it just all made sense and put it together.
And like, honestly, like living through a pandemic with someone and civil unrest, it's like you are a bae for life. Like, yeah, exactly. I would like to continue to make creative stuff with you.
Yeah, me too. Well, I think if anything, like our show Apricot is like a tribute or a love letter to queer friendship. Jake and I both lived in various cities. I'm from Australia. I lived in Berlin before I moved to LA. So we're both kind of nomads, and I think finding your queer family is so important for people like us who, for various reasons, may not have that kind of like strong base. And so our show is just really like, it's just, we made it for each other, and it was the most fun I've ever had.
Aw, ditto. Let's make another season.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm happy to branch it out into like a 30-minute sketch comedy series or a film. We're very versatile.
I love that. So Sideways Smile is up next, please.
Hi, I'm Hung. I'm the creator, writer, director of Sideways Smile. So the show came about based on my experience when I was around 23, when I just graduated from college. It's about a class that I took on gender and sexuality then, and I learned so much about the world. I didn't really know anything about anything, like any of the isms, feminism. I didn't know anything. And so I really wanted to document that journey that I took. And I started writing the pilot in 2018. And at the time I was binging shows like Pod City and Chewing Gum. And I was like, this is great. And I really want to see like a perspective from an Asian American perspective. And that was kind of the birth of this show. And I am a huge fan of just like really weird, quirky comedy. So, the show has, the first episode is pretty straightforward, but it's a 6-episode season, and, we do like a horror genre, we do animation, we do like a time jump, kind of like BoJack Horseman style. So, it was a ton of fun. And yeah, that's sort of where the inspiration came from. Diane? And sorry, my pronouns are she, her. I forgot about that one.
Thank you.
My name is Diane. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. And I came on to Sideways Smile. I actually, I met Hung through Hung's partner. We, very classically in Broad City style, he and I met in a improv 101 class so that's how it started. But then when Hung came to me with this script, because I had produced a web series before, I was like, this is it's just like a brilliant script in that she, within 6 episodes, manages to span like genre and tone and all this stuff, and yet it's a show that's got a lot of heart, but it's also a show that is very specific and purposeful about looking at all of these isms and looking at all of these intersectionalities of what it means to be like a millennial right now through an Asian American lens, through an Asian American female lens.
And also to add a queer lens too.
Yeah. So it was basically like, Christmas in a script to me. So I was really excited about it. And I think what was really cool about how we did it all is that, representation matters, and a lot of people are starving for this kind of content. And a lot of people from like behind the camera are really starving to like make content like this that they feel like they can relate so strongly to. Content that's like made by queer people of color for queer people of color. And so like we had an amazing crew that was like majority POC, majority women and trans and gender nonconforming people. And it was just kind of like a paradise. And we're really proud of it. And it's really funny.
It's hilarious. It really is.
Did we cover everything? I don't know.
I think we're good.
Great.
Amazing. Thanks, guys. So next up is Hidden Canyons.
Hey guys, my name is Brant Rotnam. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I am the creator of Hidden Canyons. I also play Troy in the series. The series came about because Jeremy is my co-producer on the project, and I had spent probably a couple years as disgruntled actors just complaining about the fact that we weren't making our own stuff, which I think every actor does. We go, oh, there's just not enough opportunity. I really should be making my own shit. And then Jeremy actually took the lead, and he made a beautiful short film, which is called On the Ride. It's premiering also this year at Short Shorts in Tokyo. And so that was kind of the inspiration for me to get off my ass and produce something as well. So the two of us came together and made Hidden Canyons. The conceit of the show is it is a LGBTQ plus sort of dramedy soap opera series where all the episodes are 1 minute long. And when I was growing up as a queer kid in sort of the late 90s, early 2000s, I didn't know anybody who was queer. I grew up in a small town outside Boston. And so my only exposure to the LGBTQ plus world was through film and TV. And I have a lot of people in my life that say they didn't see themselves represented at all in film and TV during that period. I did as a white gay man, but even that representation was very narrow. The way that queer characters were represented at that time, clearly most of them weren't written by queer writers. And there was sort of this very narrow, I think, reductive depiction of queer people as superficial, as very kind of meticulous, and often an object of ridicule. And I didn't see myself in those depictions of those characters. And so I didn't want to grow up to be gay. It took me years to accept my own sexuality because I didn't have any reference in my world or in film and TV. So the world of Hidden Canyons is, the inspiration for it was kind of twofold. I wanted to create a world where, first off, a broader spectrum of the LGBTQ plus world was represented beyond what I saw on TV growing up. So it's a fiercely representative series, both in front of and behind the camera. We wanted to kind of spotlight LGBTQ plus issues that don't get shown in other media. For instance, uniquely queer issues, like what happens when your ex meets your current partner and you start to get worried that they like each other a little bit too much, and these unique little jealousies start peeking through. That stuff that straight people don't deal with. There are unique issues with mental health and depression in the queer world. We wanted to kind of shine a little bit of a window into that. And we didn't want it to just be representative of men too. I would say in my personal life, I have more queer women than queer men. And a lot of my female friends struggle with this sort of expectation that queer women are expected to want to settle and nest. So one of our characters, Denise, has a very specific struggle with that cliche and not knowing if she wants to ascribe to that. We also wanted to show LGBTQ plus lives as being about more than just sexuality, because when I was growing up, all I saw on TV was queer lives being only about their queerness and not being about anything else. So we wanted to create this drama where their sexuality is part of who they are, but they also have career aspirations, and we wanted to see them dealing with family and what finding meaning looks like for them, and stuff completely outside of their sexuality as well. So the conceit of 1-minute episodes came from sort of the shifting nature of media on social media, and how we now see people's lives through social media through these kind of 1-minute snippets or less. And we get really invested in what's happening with people. So we thought that was kind of a fun constriction to put on the series and see kind of what kind of storytelling we could achieve in 1 minute. And we found that there is a lot of drama you can show in 1 minute. So we kind of had a lot of fun with that.
Awesome.
Should I continue from there? Hi, everybody. I am Jeremy Glazer. I identify as he, him, his. And I'm a producer on Hidden Canyons, and I also play Harrison Ross, which Brant so kindly wrote me into. He was very generous to mention that he got inspired because partly working with me on my short, but he took his idea and completely ran with it. Not only did he create his own world, he's creating his own new format, which I don't think I've ever seen a series, a digital micro series where you can write a scene or anything where there's always a cliffhanger within 60 seconds. And he so brilliantly and wrote the character so with such dynamics and layers that obviously, you know, it just flowed out of him, and it was just like, okay, yes, I'm going to be a part of this. I mean, on top of that, Brant and I have been partners for almost 3 years in life. So we are also, it's so great to not only have that element of our lives, but we also get to create together, both as artists and and just the fact that he was creating his own format with the digital 1 minute situation, I was fascinated on how he was going to pull that off. And he did that, and he was very adamant about making sure that there was queer representation, not only in front of the camera, but also each position behind the camera, just to make sure that it was so authentic. I know that he has already written a season 2, because it seems to just be a second part of his brain where it's just flowing out of him. And he's also expanding, bringing on other writers, people that are of color and other sexuality, just to make sure that, we're 2 white guys. So he wants to make sure that everybody's represented from authentic voices. And I'm really lucky to just be along for this ride and try to help in any way that I can from learning from my own experience, so that when he has questions, I'm like, well, I'm learning along with you, but from my own experience, this happens, or this is what happened. So it's kind of like we're able to create and learn together. And it was a kind of an exciting thing that we get to have in our relationship. So yeah, I'm just really proud of him and proud of this project, and just seeing what's next with it. And we're excited to be part of Outfest, obviously.
Amazing. Thanks so much to everyone. I'm just going to jump in for a couple project-specific questions. And for Team Apricot, I loved the central characters' sort of internal monologues, but also how they validate each other. I'm also obsessed with the looks and the styling that they're serving so effortlessly. It's really a visual feast, and you guys kind of spoke about that a little bit. But can you speak a little bit more about the drama of the style choices and sort of the interplay between slice of life and their sort of platonic relationship?
I mean, I can speak quickly to the relationship stuff, and then maybe I'll let Jake talk about some of the styling, if that's okay, but also we can switch. But
yeah. No,
I just remember we wrote this thing, I'm a filmmaker, I'm predominantly an actor, a director and a writer. I've never acted before. Jake is an amazing actor, and I was really nervous to be in front of the camera for the first time. And we would go down to the park and rehearse with me being inverted commas, because I was very self-conscious. And in the beginning, and Jake was always just look at me, we're just having fun, this is fun. And when we were shooting, it was similar. A friend of mine was a DP who came over and shot it. It was all pretty small, but whenever I sort of would stress or freak out, I just remember that and look at Jake, and he'd be just look at me, we're just having fun. And that was a really great way for me to just try and be in the moment and just be as authentic because these characters are just us, they're just exaggerated versions of us. And so, yeah, it's just nice that was the way that we were able, for me at least, to maintain that, was just by remembering what brought us together in the first place, was just having fun together.
That's so sweet. I feel like this whole ride of Apricot has been like that. It's just been it's very Romy-and-Michele. I'm as long as you're my co-pilot, this whole experience of digital film festivals is going to be so much fun because we're doing it together. But yeah, some of the kind of visual candy that thank you so much for that high art compliment. I think we're attracted to pretty things. When we lived together, we had a beautiful home. And so every episode was sort of if Daria and Jane got stoned in a Geico commercial. Then our challenge was that I come from the world of comedy. I do a lot of parody work. And but I do, and I've been recognized as that. So we wanted to incorporate this thing of how do we do silly things like clown makeup, or how do we do matching 90s to people in their 30s sitting next to each other in 90s. It's just, there's so much fun parts about queer life that I think if you could elevate them in a moment, you would get your own version of a music video about a very specific thing of your friendship. And I think we achieved that.
Yeah, I would just add to that as well. Like, I think it's really common for a lot of people, like the way that Jake and I relate a lot of the time is in references. So, and that's how, you know, in jokes and your inner world and relationship is built. Like, we'll be watching TV, and even when we're now separated, like I just finished the new season of Selling Sunset, and I was basically like having out loud conversations with Jake, even though he was like asleep in Los Angeles at that time. Everything is a reference, and it's a building on a building on a building on a building. And so that's like what the show ended up being. Like, we were just like, yeah, let's mash it all together, and just stream of consciousness style. And so when Jake's like, yeah, we should be in clown makeup, and I'm like, obviously, you know, and also look like we're in beige catalog models. Like, it's just, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was fun to treat things as if they are all real, like about our elevated friendship. So it was like a costume would never be discussed. Like if you were in a full wig and makeup, we were just us though. So in a way, it made our trailer low key so beautiful, because it was like, ooh, like what is this like cinematic, like there are so many looks on looks on looks, and we did that on purpose. But yeah, so, and they're like, I feel like we always joke about this, but like friendship people, I feel like a lot of people have friendships like ours where you're very specific and referential. And so when you go in and you see each of these episodes, they're very specific conversations that we've had. So yeah, it's been fun seeing people like, you know, love, like openly admit how much they love popcorn now as much as us, or that they love LaCroix.
Yes, we love LaCroix. Thanks both. So for Sideways Smile, I loved how sort of how self-possessed and knowledgeable and queer Dara sort of helps Alex to get more in tune with her body. Like Dara is so like together and knows herself. And so I'm curious for Hong and Diane to talk about Alex's character arc for sort of the rest of the series, and if this is like a preview of her coming into her queerness.
Yeah, so it is. Spoiler alert. So I wanted each episode, so the structure of the class that I took was that each week there was a very specific topic that we covered. And so the structure of the episodes is that each episode is like a very specific topic that we discuss. And so, but at the same time, we also had to build Alex's arc throughout the episodes. So yeah, I think it's Dara makes appearances, and it's, you know, the funny, she's like the funny person, you know, next to like the straight, the non-comedic character, right? And so she kind of pulls Alex along, and each episode you see like Dara kind of offering this little snippet of, you know, you could do it this way, you could think outside the box, like for once, you know, you can not do what society has kind of told you to do and to expect from you. And I think the thing about Alex is that she does have an open mind, right? She's kind of going through this journey, but she's going through it with an open mind, which is why you're able to see a full arc at the end, where she does come into like her queerness and recognizing, but it's still like baby steps, right? And kind of recognizing that there is this big wide world of things that she's never considered or expected in her life. Diane, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would like to. I really enjoyed that question, because it got me thinking about like how when I was reading the script, when, you know, we hadn't yet decided like who's gonna play who or whatever, I have been both Alex and like to think or aspire to be someone like Dara. And so I think yeah, that juxtaposition is really interesting, and it's sort of like a masterful way to look at also like within within a person's queer journey, you can't really like separate someone's queer journey out from their relationship to their race and to white supremacy. And like I personally went on all these journeys, and they were all really super tangled in each other. And I think that's where Alex's open-mindedness kind of works really well is that, like, sure, she doesn't know a lot of things, but because we unlock this sort of facet about her identity in episode 1, it's like that sort of feeds into like, oh, this other sort of question our identity in the class in episode 2. And so I think I think Alex's arc is really interesting in that way. Dara does get to have the sort of the fun, flashier sort of moments, but I think having them both is really important and really encompasses like a really wide range of experiences.
And just to add on top of that, I think when I wrote this show, I wrote it for my, like, she was 16 at the time, but my younger sister, right, who has not been exposed to any of this. And so partly the show is educational. It's supposed to present these topics in an educational way for people who have never, heard about non-binary or have never known that they could not just be gay and straight, right? They can be like a spectrum. And so, yeah, so to me, like, I really would like when young people watch the show that they realize that there are like this, that there is other things, there's other ways that you can live your life.
That's amazing. And I think you get a real cool window into that with the sort of classes that she goes to. So where a lot of different types of characters are introduced. Thank you. So for Team Killer Workout, can you speak to where we find Joy on her journey? And can you also talk a little bit about the therapist and that relationship? And
Yeah, sure. I'll say a little bit, and then maybe Sarah, do you want to jump in? Our director Sarah's here as well, and some of it is like her vision for how to put that in. But so you said Joy and where she is on her journey. So Joy basically begins this like at this point where she's at a breaking point. Like she can't stop fantasizing about like brutally murdering her clients, but she also knows like she's not a serial killer, she's like a regular person who's just gotten to this point where she can't take it anymore. And she goes to this client, and that's the opening sequence. And then she goes to this client and she kind of just gets pushed over the edge and she snaps. And so it's like her dealing with the fact that, this was just a fantasy that like maybe a lot of us have about wanting to like, like fight back against like whatever we're dealing with our bosses. But then like she actually acted on it in a way that was like violent. And then her client liked it. So now it's like a mind fuck. Like, what does she do? And so she's having like this crisis of conscience of like, she like did something that she never thought she would ever do. And then her client liked it. So there's not really the repercussions she thought that would be there, but she's not a violent person, never identified as. So she's just like having an issue, like processing the whole situation. So she shows up at Dr. Lucero's office. And then what was the question about Dr. Lucero?
I wonder, it's so clear that that's the seed of a relationship that will really kind of bring Joy into kind of reconciling like her issues and the world around her. So I just was curious about that. Yeah.
So it was really important, we felt like, to have like a strong Black woman to be her therapist. And so to have Joy as like a mixed woman who has like this white side and this Black side, and she kind of jokes about it with Cassandra and is reconciling with her identity basically. And then she has this person who's like a really strong woman who's kind of old school and no bullshit and is going to really be like this anchor for her. We really thought that was important for that character to be there. And I thought that Sarah's vision for how to direct that was really great. And maybe you could say a little more about that, Sarah.
Yeah, we, Gail was amazing. Gail played Dr. Lucero, and she just understood it right away. And we kind of vetted each other when we first met in a coffee shop. Man, I miss those days. But she knew what Joy needed, and she could see how, first she definitely thinks she's kind of spoiler alert too, she definitely thinks she's using all these euphemisms and, you know, just kidding about what happened. She doesn't really trust her or believe her, but also she's feeling joy out. And I think you get that. We chose to do, did like a dolly on a slider, just kind of pushing in, pushing out, just having that push-pull of the relationship and just slowly moving in. And Nina just crushed the scene. Thank you again, Nina. Really showing the pain of that too. I mean, she is on this breaking point and she's to the, we had talked about it that Joy went to her girlfriend, like can't tell her girlfriend, of course, what happened because of sleeping with her client. So who is she going to finally confess to is this doctor. And I mean, all of us going to therapy, I mean, we all need therapy. Let's be honest, we'd all benefit from it. But actually taking that step to go get therapy is terrifying. So not only is she vulnerable at this woman's office, then she's getting laughed at for finally snapping and having a human moment. But I love the end of the scene that Eric wrote where you just know she's on her side. And she is calling upon Eric through his mentor at a film festival. I was there for another intersectional feminist web series I had the fortune of directing, and Jake connected Eric and I. Eric liked my work and I read the script and just had dreamed I'd been able to see something like that as a little queer kid growing up in below the Mason-Dixon line. And seeing more of like a mainstream narrative character like Joy, just she would have been my hero growing up. I know it's kind of, she's an anti-hero, but she would have been my hero. So thank you again, Nina, for embodying that. But yeah, I think that the story in general, I was drawn to it because I think I've been at that breaking point way earlier than we were at with the civil unrest that we're currently going through in this nation, which was a big reckoning that we all needed. And although COVID has us all through this virtually, I'm kind of grateful for it, that it's created us all to look at these screens and share this collective experience where it doesn't matter your race, your sexuality, your class, anything, we're all can be affected by this disease, this pandemic. And the fact that hopefully we all awaken to this collective experience and have more empathy in general. And I think that that anger due to being displaced and the anger that Joy has towards her experiences, I mean, reflect again our collective experience. I mean, as queer people, I've been fired for being gay. Fortunately, now we have the Supreme Court to protect us for that, but it took till 2020 for that. And it's crazy now that the world's lens is on it. And we're all looking, we're all watching. So all I hope is that for the future of the show that we can create more episodes and that hopefully they inspire people, and hopefully we can keep growing from this experience. And we hope that you all enjoyed the show. And thank you so much for having us, Outfest. And thank you, Lauren. This is really rad. Outfest was my dream. I used to go, when I first moved to LA, and I always go to every screening. That whole weekend I'd be blocked off. I would volunteer so I'd get free tickets when I was broke sleeping on couches. So it's so cool I know it's virtual right now and I love being in that theater with all of you, but it's so rad. And thank you for keeping the show on.
I'm so glad you're with us, and I apologize from earlier. I don't think you got a chance to introduce yourself, so I'm sorry if I cut you off. Sarah Warner, the amazing director of Killer Workout. So thank you. And so just a quick question for the Hidden Canyons team before we wrap up. You spoke a little bit on the format, which I was definitely going to ask about. So that was very informative and cool. And I'm wondering how you decided on the particular relationships that you decided to highlight, and do the couples' storylines intersect with one another, like farther into the future?
Oh, that's such a great question. Yeah. I would say that one thing that unites all of the characters in this series is that they are all at a point in their lives where they think they want something, and the cracks in their resolve are starting to show. So you see certain characters that, they've taken off their party shoes and they're ready to settle and commit to career. And then you start to see how that becomes complicated, and you see their artistic selves wanting to shine through. Or you see people that never want to make compromises on their freedom, start to see the limitations of what that is. A lot of the storylines are ripped from either my own personal life or other people involved in the show. Two of my really close friends who are women are having a kid, and I'm helping them have the kid. And that is a scenario you see visited in the show. In real life, it was staggering the amount of paperwork that we had to go through, and legal counsel and codification of what the relationship would mean and how I would be related to that kid. And it all worked out really easily for us, but you could easily envision a world where that kind of stuff got complicated. So where we see some of these characters going in the future of the series, you definitely see their lives intertwined. You already kind of start to see hints of that in the 26 episodes that we've shot. That definitely gets further developed down the line, particularly with Trent and Denise, their siblings that are dealing with that. And you start to see, sort of Trent's vision of fatherhood and what he wants, and his idea of leaving a legacy conflict with assisting his sister and her wife have a kid that is their kid as well. So I won't spoil where the rest of the storylines are going, but yes, absolutely, you'll start to see all of these characters sort of interweave in each other's lives.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm also excited to see where it's going to go. I'm already starting, because fortunately getting to see some of the behind the scenes is I get to read it with him and saying, oh, but what if these two people were, it's kind of a lot of like, there's a little Easter eggs kind of planted in, especially in the first season. Like, oh, I wonder who that one could be. Is it someone new? Is it somebody that's already been established? So it is exciting to kind of see how it all unfolds and keep having people come back to find out.
And we've also opened it up to our worlds as well. We say, we have this series that one of the aims is to highlight underserved narratives. So what stories, we've asked our own community, what stories have you not seen told? What in your own experience have you not seen expressed on screen? And that's part of why we've opened up the creative team beyond just me. And so we've been really kind of drawing on the experiences of people within our worlds.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone for participating. And it's just amazing to hear about each of your journeys and also your hopes for the projects for the future. Thanks again to Outfest, and thank you for the Outfest audience for joining us. And thanks to the staff, donors, and volunteers who are pulling off the amazing feat of an all-digital festival. Take care and be safe, everyone. And thanks again.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.